Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, John McKechnie. That is Mario Puig. We are fully into the offseason here. We're a couple weeks out from the NFL draft being in the books officially. So now we're starting to see the post-draft market take shape as far as the ADP is concerned. So we are going to be taking a look at some offenses that we're going to be trying to target at their current ADPs during this episode, but we will get things rolling. We do have a little bit of current events going on, a bit of a splash move between the Steelers and the Cowboys on Wednesday with George Pickens. The shoe finally drops. He finally gets traded out of Pittsburgh, goes to Dallas. Dallas, I think, was smart to take this, quote unquote risk in the sense that yes, you have CeeDee Lamb, but you really had nothing else as far as that pass catching group was concerned that is really going to scare defenses. Jalen Tolbert, fine enough wide receiver 3, but overexposed as a wide receiver 2. And yeah, there just needed to be a bit more spark in this Dallas passing offense, especially with the backfield kind of being what it is. So what did you think of this move? Did you envision Dallas as the dance partner for George Pickens? And, what does this mean for Pickens' value? The Steelers will unpack the whole thing.
Yeah, it's not like I foresaw the specific trade, but if you made us sit down and do a brainstorming session about who could trade for Pickens, Dallas definitely would have been the first, maybe the first suspect, not just one of the first suspects, because you got the Jerry Jones part. Jerry's going to pull the trigger. You don't have to worry about trigger hesitation. And it's a clear need, even with CeeDee Lamb getting upwards of 36% of the team targets or whatever. It's still a thing where there's no balance in the way that they space the field. There's no balance in the sense of the skill sets between the reps that they're putting on the field at receiver. Guys like Tolbert don't have any actual calling cards. You put him out there and you hope that he kind of just is lucky in the defense. That you hope that the coverage slips. You hope that he's going against a backup corner who can't handle a basic look yet. Those are the situations where Tolbert wins, and those are not situations you can plan on at all. You can't budget the assumption of the Tolbert viable snaps will happen this much and on this kind of frequency. No, he can't help you. You're just at the mercy of luck when Tolbert's on the field. Whereas when you have Pickens on the field, and if the defense is crashing down with a safety over the top of Lamb in the slot and also putting a cover, a linebacker to give a little help over the middle, dropping back, now the defense has spread itself thin in the part of the field where Pickens thrives. And it's true to point out Pickens is somewhat limited. You don't use Pickens on all types of routes from all types of alignments. You use Pickens on the boundary and on the sideline. That's where he lives. And if you need him to do more than that, he might disappoint you. But with Lamb there, clearly he doesn't need to do more than that. The issue is, will Pickens go insane for any particular reason? That's the concern. And if he doesn't go insane, then he's just one of the most talented receivers in a really long time, and a player the defense is not prepared to give due attention while also appropriately defending Lamb.
So how do you think that, that this kind of, how much scarier does this really make the Dallas offense? And do we see kind of a philosophical change where they really do lean into being extremely pass happy, especially considering what they have in the backfield? I know they actually addressed the backfield a decent bit in the NFL draft a couple weeks ago, adding Jaden Blue and adding another power back in there as well. But is this a passing game that now that it's less one speed, you can believe in a little bit more now?
Yeah. The question though is, what is Brian Schottenheimer's goal as the sculptor of this offense? Is he looking at it in any particular way beyond just the general goal of we want to control the clock or whatever? I don't know what his goals are exactly. It would not be shocking to me if Schottenheimer were a very run heavy sort of coach. But like you were hinting at, Dallas doesn't exactly have obvious running back personnel to leverage the otherwise, I think, extreme run blocking strength that they have on that offensive line. I mean, getting Tyler Booker there with Tyler Smith on the other side, and then Cooper Beebe, who I'm also a big time truther for at center, like they're going to pave over absolutely everybody. So I don't know if it matters that Javonte Williams is an underwhelming running back one, and I don't know if it matters that Miles Sanders can't do anything. He might be kind of good enough anyway, because it is hard to fail behind an offensive line that's going to clear the kind of space that those three guys will. But they don't have from scrimmage depth anywhere but tight end, and the tight ends, Ferguson's good. Schoonmaker, I guess, is athletic, but I just don't care. I don't really want to build an offense centrally through either of them. So if I could imagine Schottenheimer running a low tempo offense, because you can't run with tempo unless you got guys who can give you reps off the bench, quality reps. If you run tempo and you have no depth, you're just kind of starving yourself. They're not starving. You're spending more money than you have. You can't keep up with the pace that you set yourself to when you run up tempo and you don't have from scrimmage depth. So I could imagine Dallas running like 58 plays a game and in effect being neither pass happy nor run happy, but sort of just trying to put as much of the passing game target percentage on Lamb and Pickens, and then trying to lean on that offensive line in the run game as much as possible. Otherwise, I don't really know what else they can do right now.
I think that depth concern, which obviously gets a bit better with the Pickens addition, but you said, if you're gonna go warp speed, you got to have guys that you can mix in. They don't really have that. It's a very top heavy depth chart. So that kind of creates an interesting dynamic. Right now, it looks like Pickens ADP checks in as like an end of the 6th round type of guy.
Man, on Underdog, I don't think you're going to do any better than that, but it admittedly is not. It's not the price you want to jump out of your seat to pay. In best ball, though, I guess that's the time to do it. Not that I would ever bench Pickens if I had him on a redraft team, but at least if he has a full decoy game, like if Dak Prescott throws 26 passes and Lamb gets 12 of those targets and Pickens doesn't really do a whole lot but pull the safety on those targets, at least in best ball, he's not in your lineup and you don't get so mad about it. But guessing the specific matchups or specific situations where Pickens is going to get that look, where the defense doesn't keep the safety over the top like they should, that's something that the defense is ultimately determining, right? It's like it's not even up to Dallas. It's like they're waiting for the defense to see if they play it the wrong way, and we don't know why or when defenses would do that. So I don't think Pickens is going to be conventionally predictable on like a matchup basis, and he might even be one of those guys who's about as good against a good defense as a bad one, because when he's really on, he can win against anybody.
Right. No, predictability has never been like a part of the deal when you're going with George Pickens, but you're investing because there is that 200-yard, 2-touchdown game that wins your week for you basically by itself. So I imagine there's going to be a couple of those, certainly more than I thought that there could have possibly been in Pittsburgh this year as currently constructed. Speaking of that, on Pittsburgh's side, what's up with that offense now?
Right. So I didn't assume specifically that the Steelers were going to trade Pickens when they acquired Metcalf, but it definitely came to mind as a heightened possibility. It was possible they were going to try to trade Pickens either way. But getting Metcalf, it was one of the things like, okay, it's not as if Arthur Smith's going to call 34 pass attempts per game. He's going to call 26, 27, and you don't really need Metcalf and Pickens both if that's the kind of offense you're going to run. So, or at least like you're not dependent on Pickens the way you would be before the Metcalf trade. So I think it suits Metcalf quite well. I definitely think you have to read the Pickens trade as a good development for Metcalf. I think they could have coexisted somewhat. It's basically just Metcalf's going to one corner and Pickens is going to the other, and whichever one gets the step on the defender is the one who gets the target. That makes sense, especially in like a big personnel, like a double tight end, run heavy offense. The defense is not going to have a ton of resources at the back part there especially to cover both corners at the same time. So it hurts like the ability of the Steelers passing game to scale up, but Metcalf was headed towards something like 30+% target share anyway. If only because, like I said, this offense is so big personnel and is so built to draw the defense downward that Metcalf was always the way you play off of that. Like the entire way you hurt a defense for responding to the initial threats that you express as the Steelers offense is a presence like Metcalf's, because he's such an extreme vertical speed catch radius threat that it plays off the decision of the defense to get closer to the line of scrimmage and to get heavier and slower. So it's a tension that tension is the founding basis of the Steelers passing game, and I think Metcalf will be quite consistent. Therefore, like his inconsistencies will have to do with dropping a slant pass where he was open, or maybe fumbling after the catch or something like that. But on those go routes and post routes, if defenses are responding to the Steelers' run game the way they traditionally do, that's going to be really tough to stop Metcalf.
I'm concerned when there's just like there's no one else to really threaten. I think you like draw.
It's the run game, basically. It's the run game and the double tight end detail, because they're betting like, look, you could easily have a safety left over the top of Metcalf, but if you do, then we have more mass up front than you do, and we're going to bet that we can run you over a little bit. And particularly in the games where that run threat is being respected, if the run game is popping a little bit and the defense creeps up that safety, it's just bam, that they get it right away.
No question about that. It's just, as it stands, I think that there's still like a couple things that need to get worked out with this Pittsburgh offense. Like I think we're still a ways from it being like kind of finalized going into the season. Obviously, quarterback, I think we're all waiting on.
What are they going to? Are they going to trade for like Kirk Cousins or something? It's if you're not going to get Rodgers already, what are you? I don't know what they're waiting on exactly, but Mason Rudolph doesn't seem like it can possibly be the answer, but I guess it might be.
It just might. I mean, I didn't think he was as unplayable last year as I would have expected, but it was still, like it's just how much better can you look than Will Levis?
Yeah,
like almost anyone.
Sorry, the deal with Rudolph is he's not that bad. Everyone just hates him as a person. So it's right. It's like the Rodgers problem, but he's not even in theory supposed to be very good. Like, I guess in that sense, like you might as well sign Rodgers. Like your bit is that we hate our quarterbacks. So you need to pick players who fit the system. And that means Rodgers quarterback 1, Rudolph quarterback 2. I don't know if Kirk's annoying enough to fit into their scheme.
No, he's a bit too just.
It's on the line. I can't tell.
Yeah, right there on the border. And then, do you think they make another move at receiver, or if not, like who do you kind of envision moving up for fantasy? Because I liked Rowan Wilson a lot going into last year.
It has to be incomplete.
Him. I think so.
Like, I wasn't that high on Wilson as a prospect, but it's like clearly he can at least be a decoy. He can run. There shouldn't really be a reason why Wilson is a scratch all year like last year. I'm willing to take the leap of faith that Wilson was shrink wrapped basically because he did not get on the field in training camp. Like that's when he was out till like week 6 or something with that training camp injury, right? And then it was like they never even tried to get him acclimated is what it felt like. So Calvin Austin is not a sufficient answer. If that's the answer, then yeah, the Steelers have bigger problems than not bigger problems than their quarterback situation, but it's another issue they don't need given the quarterback situation.
Correct. Absolutely. I like Calvin Austin. He's a lot of fun, fast, exciting, but you just wonder about like how much can you realistically
package guy
him up. Yeah.
You need them, but you don't want them starting.
No, you do not. One more kind of recent newsy item to get into before we get into the main topic of today's show. I promise we'll get there. there's a now that tournaments have kind of opened up on best ball sites like Underdog, we're starting to see the post draft ADPs start to solidify just a bit. And one that I've noticed that we don't often have the market give us a direct toss up quite as clear as this one, but we're getting it right now, and that would be the Giants' backfield with Tyrone Tracy and with Cam Skattebo. It looks like as of this draft that I did earlier in the week, I think I did this on Sunday. Tyrone Tracy went with the first pick of the 8th round, and Cam Skattebo went in the middle of the 9th. However, that ADP would not be what you're seeing out there as of today, as of Thursday. Right now, Skattebo has taken a slight lead over Tyrone Tracy, and they are going within one pick of each other on average. Cam Skattebo at 98.5 and Tyrone Tracy at 99.2. So, as it stands on May 8th, what is your stance on your preferred Giants backfield option?
I think the fantasy community, the fantasy ADP markets kind of have a tendency, especially I feel like the last like 2 or 3 years, it's gotten really bad. But there's this trend now of anytime a rookie gets drafted before like the 6th round, people start inferring like, oh, the team wants to bench the guy at that position. They want to the 5th rounder is going to bench the guy ahead of him because the guy ahead of him is a 7th rounder, and that's how everything works. It doesn't work that way. But in the case of Skattebo and Tracy, I think people are right to chase the new thing because to me, in all of these cases, it just comes down to what these players have in their profile. You know, what kind of production, what is their athleticism, their size adjusted athleticism, their age adjusted production. These are ways we can fairly reliably determine which players have the most talent with the football. And by the bases that I always work on, Skattebo just point blank is a much better prospect than Tracy. And Tracy, to be fair, is still only in his 3rd year playing running back. So some guys are developed into running backs. Tracy's kind of in the midst of that right now after playing receiver at Iowa and then at Purdue they moved him to running back. It's like he's trying to get to a certain point and he might get there. Skattebo is one of those guys though that's just born to play running back. Like a doctor from a young age should have been able to observe as he was like bumping into things but not falling over. Like, oh, your child should probably wear a helmet and be a running back when it's safe for him to do that. He doesn't seem to tip over the way the other babies do. Skattebo has some weird thing where he just doesn't tip over. He's very like as anchored as any running back I can remember. And he I don't know if he has like a wrestling background, but when he runs, it looks like when those wrestlers, those like the Olympic wrestlers, when they're trying to like snatch each other's ankles out from each other. Like that's what it looks like to watch Skattebo run with a football. And between the tackles, he's just it's like his processing is almost Jedi-like. Like the way that Skattebo just goes the right way all the time. It looks almost as if he could do it blindfolded or something. Like he just knows how to cut against, you know, the mass of humanity that's moving toward him and how to get away from it, even in a phone booth, like especially in a phone booth. And that actually leads to the one downside of Skattebo, which is that he's really slow. He's 4.7 slow. It's not hype. He really is that slow. So it's actually in traffic where he's most elusive, because once you're in the open field, you're pretty much everybody on defense is catching up to him. You know, like even defensive ends are faster than Skattebo these days. So he will struggle to peel off 20 plus and especially 40 plus yard carries. But I do think Skattebo is going to be one of the NFL's most reliable, 1 to 5 yard running backs in the NFL. Like getting to 5, I think he can do that about as well as anybody. The bigger concern for him would be, I guess, like, is the Giants offense just so bad that nothing can grow here? And it is possible that Skattebo more so ruins Tracy than, brings big fantasy value in his own right if the Giants are bad enough. And I do think the Giants might be that bad. Joe Shane has no idea what he's doing. Brian Dable's basically a hostage at this point. He doesn't want to be there. So things could get pretty bad, but I don't know. I think Skattebo is just one of those guys who's a little different. And the 4-7 thing would normally be a red line for me. For most prospects, it's like if you cross this, it's just not happening. But exceptions always occur eventually to previously established rules. And I think when literally every single detail in Skattebo's profile, aside from the speed question, grades memorably high by running back standards, like really, really top of the list. So it generally is true to say a 4-7 running back can't start in the NFL, but I just think there's reason to believe Skattebo might be one of the next exceptions to it. And crucially for fantasy purposes, he can definitely catch a lot of passes. So there's the workhorse upside with Skattebo is much higher than it is with even other coveted running back prospects. Like there is no chance that Travion Henderson in the best case scenario can get to nearly as many touches from scrimmage in a season as Skattebo can. And of course, like Henderson's way more explosive. Henderson's probably the better player in general, but it's that usage detail with Skattebo that's like, there aren't many players who can take up a workload like he might be able to.
No, exactly. So there's a lot of reason to get excited. And again, I think it's fascinating that, the market has drawn such a clear kind of throwing up their hands. They're like, I know we need one of the Giants running backs here. I can't decide which one, whether it's Tracy or Skattebo, but it seems like that gap is getting closer, and maybe we'll start to see Skattebo, kind of pull ahead more definitively here as more drafts get in the books and the ADP data kind of crystallizes a little bit more. Before we get on over to our next topic, talking about some cheap offenses that we're going to be targeting in drafts, some stacks that are attainable without having to jump ADP by a couple of rounds, that type of thing. We do have a message from our friends over at Circa. The ultimate fantasy football draft can only take place in Las Vegas. That's true. Circa Resort and Casino wants to bring your whole league to Vegas with the ultimate fantasy football experience giveaway. The winner brings your 12-person league for a 2-night stay at Circa Resort, and you have your draft at a cabana at Stadium Swim, plus limo transportation to and from the airport, a welcome party at Legacy Club. Legacy Club is sick. A booth at the world's largest sportsbook, and more. There's no better place to draft than Circa. 21 and up, go to circalasvegas.com for more information. Also got a message from our friends over at Blue Wire. And I want to remind everybody that you can get 15% off any RotoWire product right now if you go to rotowire.com. Use that code ROTO15 if you're joining us on the live stream. You can see that promo code at the bottom of the screen. Thank you for watching along with us on live stream, whether it's on X, I always say Twitter though, or on our YouTube channel. Either way, thank you very much. But moving on, Mario, let's kind of give the class our definition here for what we mean by a cheap offense before kind of going back and forth with some teams that we think have some pretty attainable, affordable stacks at different price points in drafts.
Yeah, we're just trying to look at the less than obvious, less than conventionally most valued stacks to pursue. But I think this year more than most, there's a sort of incongruity in the markets between the quarterbacks on some of these offenses and then the sum of pass catchers and those offenses. So it's tougher this year, I think, than most to definitively draw that line and say, like, this is a cheap stack, this is an expensive one, because there's like, you can do partial stacks, right? And in a case of the Bills receivers, it's kind of cheap. Like Khalil Shakir is not that expensive for a player who drew so many targets per snap last year and is clearly the wide receiver one to Josh Allen, who can go as high as like the second round or whatever. If Keon Coleman, I feel if I remember, he's like 8th or 9th or 10th round kind of thing. So you would look at a guy like Allen and normally figure like, or at least I would kind of figure like, hey, with his passing projection that we have for him, surely his number one receiver must, be in the fourth, fifth, maybe third round, something, wherever Stephon Diggs used to go. And it's only the Allen part that's really expensive. So like you couldn't really call the Bills a cheap stack, but you could call the Bills receivers a cheap stack. But in best ball tournaments, especially, people do want the full stack. So it's I guess we wouldn't count the Bills as an eligible answer in this case, if only because Allen is so expensive himself.
No, exactly. So that is wild, and we've seen it time and time again where a quarterback that's connected to some high ADP assets is for whatever reason going outside the 10th or the 12th round. For example, I think back to last year with the Lions. Jared Goff, we don't think he's like the best quarterback in the league or anything, but you had a guy in Amon-Ra St. Brown who's first round pick in drafts last year. You had Sam Laporta. You got two exciting running backs that he can filter the ball out to. And Jameson Williams was kind of an untapped upside guy going into last year, and even still, Goff was going pretty late in drafts. So that there are ways in which this can work. Before we name our first of these offenses that fit the bill, we do have a dynasty question from our guy, Michael. So drafted Judkins and Dylan Sampson in the same draft. If you're going to trade Judkins, would you also trade Sampson as sort of a package deal? So I guess kind of like hedging that someone wants, full access to this Browns backfield production.
I'm not particularly high on Sampson, so I'm sort of indifferent on the question of holding him. If it gets the deal done, if the other person values Sampson, it'd be nothing to me to throw in Sampson. So that'd maybe be a little bit almost like too good to be true, I guess. But if the other person values Sampson, I would be interested in trading Sampson as a standalone. And if they're set on Judkins but demand that Sampson be included, I would have no qualms at all about doing it. I might have qualms about trading Judkins though. I want them to pay a high price for Judkins.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that he sets up, he's kind of one of the big winners among the running backs relative to their landing spot from draft weekend. So I think that definitely, checks out. I want to start with an offense that in years past would have been very, pricey to stack up. And I think there's still parts of it that are. But there's also kind of this interesting logjam as far as the receivers are concerned, and that hasn't really shifted much. But I want to talk about San Francisco because as it goes, it is very easy to within the flow of whatever draft you're doing to grab one George Kittle in the early 5th round. It's easy to grab one of Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, or Brandon Ayuk with one of your next 2 picks. And then a little bit later, even still, you can grab Brock Purdy as like a ninth round type of guy, or late 9th, early 10th type of guy. So all of that to say is that you don't have to bend over backwards to get a full 49er stack into your lineup. And I think that is something that's, something that would not have been possible a year ago or older or further in the past. And in regards to Christian McCaffrey, I suppose he's almost like a different discussion entirely with where he's going. I don't know if you want to touch on that at all, but this Niners offense, how it's setting up in the ADP, are you liking it?
Yeah, I have some concerns about the offensive line. They're very Trent Williams dependent. They don't even have Jalen Moore, or whoever that was that played in Williams's place last year when he was hurt and then got signed by the Chiefs in free agency to start at left or compete to start at left tackle anyway. So if an offensive line goes bad, it can really tank the whole offense, even a Kyle Shanahan offense. I can't tell if they're kind of pushing their luck a little bit too much there. I am not high on a guy like Ben Barch. DJ Humphries as a Trent Williams backup doesn't really move me either. Admittedly, I don't know anything about Jake Brendel. Dominic Pooney seems pretty good, but the problem is when this Shanahan Purdy offense was really rolling, they had a good offensive line. Maybe it wasn't great, but it was good. And I don't know if they have a good offensive line right now. And then, Purdy, if he has a bad offensive line, I start to lose a little bit of faith, and just normally I would have faith in that the Shanahan effect just overrides all other things. I start to worry that it doesn't if enough other margins get pressed. However, these things clearly are factored into the price, which is much lower than in previous instances. Getting Debo and Ayuk and Kittle 2 years ago would have cost you like a third, a fourth, and a seventh round pick or something like that. So it might be it's either Kittle or maybe even Juwan Jennings who's going highest now of that group, bizarrely. And I personally, even though I like Jennings, I see him just as a wide receiver 3 type. I really don't think he's not any better than average starter. And to me, Ricky Pearsall is the more interesting player. So if I can get Ricky Pearsall, who I think can be this team's wide receiver 1 or 2 this year, and I can get him in the 8th round, I like that. The Ayuk part is tougher. I don't want to count a guy with his kind of talent out, even with a big injury being a problem. It might be fair to suggest that Ayuk could be better prepared for the 2025 season, coming back from an ACL tear where at least he's in training camp and stuff, than missing training camp. And I don't know if the cold legs had anything to do with his trouble last year, but Ayuk will at some point come back. Kyle Shanahan offense will generally be productive rather than unproductive. And I don't know. I think there's just enough firepower. I like a guy like Jacob Cowing, not that I'm picking him. I can look at the depth at receiver and feel comfortable about that depth chart, even though I can't really tell the specific way I expect it to work at the top. So getting Purdy, Pearsall, and Kittle that's like a trio that works pretty well with my rankings as it lines up to the ADP.
Yeah, that's the big thing to me is just how little you have to alter the shape of your draft. And
it can be a backup stack. You can have like a more expensive stack, and then the 49ers can be your second one.
No, 100%. So like this stack starts in like the 5th round, the early part of the 5th round. I think would be kind of like your sweet spot if you wanted to go after this with Kittle at the start of it. But then Pearsall just a couple rounds later, easy to get on Purdy. In some instances, like the room will kind of sniff out that you're going after a stack and kind of try to blow it up before you're able to. No one's gonna like jump way over you to draft Brock Purdy to spoil your Niners one.
I will say it seems to me that on Underdog, people are taking quarterbacks a little bit earlier this year, and last year they were taking them a little earlier than the year before. What I haven't done enough drafts sorry, knocked over something on my desk. What I haven't done enough drafts to pay attention to yet is whether are there quarterbacks going earlier because people want better quarterback 2s, or are quarterbacks going earlier because more teams are taking quarterback 3s and thus are trying to get their 2 earlier than last year also. But it's something to just keep a little bit of an eye on, because I've seen quarterbacks like Purdy and whatever so-called good quarterback 2 a team might be pursuing. I've seen them take guys like that even without the stack interest in play, just because some people are more than they are desperate to pursue a stack with each quarterback pick. They're seemingly desperate to avoid like a dud at quarterback.
Sure. And I think that you do kind of like, once you get past Herbert, I mean, like you and I are going to disagree with Trevor Lawrence and CJ Stroud being QB 19 and 18 respectively in the ADP, but it gets a little bit foggy once you get past Bo Nix. I mean, Justin Fields is QB 11 right now.
And those rankings, I bet, have a pretty high, like the quarterback ADP, I should say, has a high like standard deviation or whatever, I bet, because especially with people pursuing stacks so neurotically these days, you just cannot believe the ADP after Allen, Lamar, and whoever else, Daniels. It's like most things are on the table at that point. People will jump a round or 2 or jump like 5 spots in a positional ranking just to diversify and to get stacks.
See, no, that's 100% the case. And, oftentimes like these quarterbacks end up being like that last piece that is drafted for a given stack. So either way, keep your head on a swivel. But I think
Yes.
that the 49ers do kind of like interestingly qualify for this in a way that I wouldn't have necessarily anticipated. And I was like just kind of ready to jump ship on this 49ers team. Generally, I kind of let them go by the wayside last year. I mean, I had other gigantic pitfalls, don't get me wrong, but that was not one of them. But I don't know, the way it's shaping up this year, I am definitely interested. I wanted to throw Tennessee out there as an option for you. I know I've kind of alluded to it on recent podcasts since the draft has taken place, and we saw them, grab Cam Ward, grab a couple of rookie pass catchers, Ayo Manor and Shamir DK. Both, it looks like Ayo Manor is the preferred rookie receiver in Tennessee. His ADP in the top 200, whereas DK is kind of strictly going as a last pick type of flyer. You mentioned Chig Okonkwo, the tight end,
Yes.
last week, as someone that you're interested in as a late round target for you. So again, this is an offense that it has no players going in the top 50. The highest drafted player on average is Calvin Ridley, going just around pick 53. Tony Pollard, pick 78. And then you got to wait until the 130s for Tyjae Spears, and then Cam Ward a little bit after that at pick 155. I still don't know what, if I'm drafting 10 times within this particular range, if I'm taking, or what percentage I'm taking Ward versus Matthew Stafford. That is kind of like a tricky one for me, but I do like the Ward potential this year. And I think, again, this is a Tennessee offense that no one's really that interested in grabbing a ton of. So in the off chance it does work out, it's one way to covering some bases.
Well, in best ball, and especially I wish Underdog did their best ball mania with 20 rounds instead of 18. I hate 18 rounds because it's a little harder to justify the quarterback 3 spot. But if for some reason you have a quarterback 3 spot, I think Ward and whatever accompanying Titans pass catching interests are the ideal way to play it, at least, unless the ADP changes a little bit. I do worry that Ward's upside and consistency won't be there by quarterback 2 standards this year, just because the Titans are so short on pass catching options. It's like after Ridley, there might not be an 80 target receiver on that team. It might be Okonkwo, who's the second leading pass catcher. I kind of hope he is, because he's really good in my opinion, or at least I would like to see him do more. But the Ward Okonkwo tandem I think on like 2/3 of my pre-draft best ball teams. But I don't have any Ridley shares. That's the only thing that's missing as far as like a proper Titan stack for me.
And, obviously it's a little bit more feet to the fire to go after Ridley. Maybe you're looking at George Kittle at that particular stage of the
Ridley's
draft.
worth the pick. I'm a little anxious about not having more, because it's like, I do think Ward could be pretty good, and I do think Ridley has always been a good receiver. He's not complete. He'll drop passes. He'll get alligator arms or whatever, but he's still slippery as hell. And I mean, no one else can get targets there.
That is correct. So I think that he, by one way or another, it's going to work out for him as like a early 5th round type of guy. New England also has kind of an interesting shape to its ADP. Unsurprisingly, the buzzy rookie Trevion Henderson is going the highest among the Patriots options right now at the end of the 5th round, early 6th. ADP at 60.3. Got Stephon Diggs, veteran, coming off the ACL, about a round and a half after that. Then you got Drake May at pick 120. Kyle Williams, pick 123. Ramondre Stevenson, 130. Then a little bit further down, you get to Hunter Henry, Demario Douglas, and Kayshon Boutte, just barely on average getting drafted. So only 7 guys getting drafted, none of them in the top 50. Most of them going between pick 190 and pick 130. Is there value to be had here in this Patriots offense? Is it one that you're considering picking up multiple shares of?
I'm definitely interested, but I'm anxious. I feel like it's a little difficult to guess the rotation between the running backs and the receivers in this offense. Stephon Diggs, I guess we would assume, is the odds-on wide receiver 1 type, but at his age, coming back from an ACL, and last year, correctly or not, the Texans restricted Diggs to the slot. Maybe that changes with the Patriots. Maybe Diggs does more of the flanker type things on the boundary, but I don't know how many 3 wide sets this team is going to run. The offensive line for the Patriots is they're building it. They're starting to put the foundation in place and work it all out. But until you got like a good pass blocking offensive line, I don't think Mike Vrabel's the type to throw more than 30 passes in a game if it's up to him. And so I think this might be an offense that runs more than people want it to, and maybe rotates the receivers more than people would like, because as much as I believe Demario Douglas is a good slot receiver and maybe even could get quality routes, quality targets on the boundary, he's not going to be on the field that much if the Patriots are running 2 tight end, which I think they're going to run a lot of with Austin Hooper there. They like him quite a bit, but there are certain ways it could go differently. Like Hunter Henry, long history of durability troubles, I should say. So if Hooper's the only tight end available, if Jaheim Bell is the tight end too, then they're running some 3 wide that week for sure. And if Douglas is on the field, I think he's just green light. I think he goes no matter what. But guessing how many slot snaps he might get is a little more difficult. And meanwhile, I think a guy like Kyle Williams is liable to be a decoy, which it would make sense for the Patriots to do it more specifically. Like, I think the Patriots have a distinct lack of speed on offense, specifically the kind of boundary receiver, vertical speed kind of presence. And Williams might not be good at anything other than that, but he's definitely good at that one thing at least. So if the look is there, if the single coverage is there and Williams gets a step running a clearing route, I definitely think May can land that shot. But what I'm worried about is in practice, this might turn out to be one of those things where it's like Williams is doing a lot of distance running because Stephon Diggs and maybe even the tight ends and the running backs are getting kind of schemed open for these designed touches. I think you might see a lot of screen passes to both to actually, if they keep Antonio Gibson, you might as well throw to all of Stevenson, Henderson, and Gibson. They're all capable in that way. And behind an offensive line that's getting a lot of run reps against the defense, it's like you can tenderize the defense a bit, get them slipping some gaps in some spots, and make them really pay for it. But I just don't see, other than Diggs and maybe Hunter Henry, anyone getting really consistent targets in this offense. Even like Mac Hollins is going to play. God, that sucks. So they're going to cut Kendrick Bourne, but like Mac Hollins, they're probably going to give him like 500 snaps, and he's definitely not getting targets, not consistent quality targets anyway. So I will say the more Hollins plays, the better that is for Diggs. The worse it is, the much worse it is for Douglas, but the better it is for Diggs.
Interesting there. I mean, I think would this be an offense then, instead of stacking, maybe you're more attuned to just like get Drake May and not really worry about how else he's getting the production, just count that he's going to by some form or fashion?
I think it's just an example of a case where you need to have some diversification in mind after a certain amount of exposure. Like if you draft 10 Drake May teams and you've drafted 30 teams, I'd say maybe stay off a little bit. Not that I don't think Drake May is ever going to be the problem with your team, but I do think some people take May hoping that he'll be kind of what Justin Fields is, and he's not going to run quite that much. I think May could be like a top 3 fantasy quarterback with the right offense built around him. I just think the Patriots might be a year away. And then meanwhile, other than Diggs, it's just so easy to see those guys ending up in kind of like bit specialist and or decoy roles. So I would prefer to keep my Patriots stack exposure somewhat contained. I don't know what the point would be, like the percentage you'd have to hit the brakes at, but I just don't want to count on, I don't want to bet heavily on the idea that A, May will throw a lot of passes, or that B, anyone other than Diggs will get many of those targets, because I just think this might be a run-heavy offense. They'll be more ambitious in a year than they are right now, and it might take extenuating circumstances to get them to really loosen up the offense. Like if the Patriots defense turns out to be trash and they have to play catch up every week, some weird stuff like that sometimes happens and kind of juices the offense a little bit. But I think if the Patriots have just sort of like a lower range trend of outcomes, then it might be a run heavy offense where only Diggs is the consistently active receiver.
Yeah, no, they're difficult to fully project one way or the other. I think that May's the type of talent that you want to kind of believe.
I love May.
Yeah, so you can see it working, as early as this year, but the players that are going to kind of help make it happen for May in New England is a little bit tougher to read. I think just on draft acquisition cost, I'm happy to grab plenty of Hunter Henry and
yes.
Pop Douglas just
because
Henry. They go so late. But you got to like kind of make sure that you're pretty insulated. Although where you're drafting them kind of de facto does that. Henry's going to be no more than your tight end 2, and maybe even your tight end 3, and Douglas, maybe the last receiver.
I love that stack. If I can get Diggs as like a wide receiver 3, May as a quarterback 2, and Henry as a tight end 2, that I think is a pretty potent trio.
For plenty of like bang for your buck off of that. Like you're not. It's not like the Cincinnati one where you need to get the first overall pick to get Jamar Chase. Like you need to spend.
Need 3 of the first 17 picks.
Yeah. I pulled that off like in 1 or 2 of them. I just like pre-draft, and I've just hated how those teams shaped up. It's like, cool, I have Chase, Higgins, and Burrow, but absolutely nobody else. Before we move on to our next team, we're going to talk a little bit of Jags. Michael has a super chat for us.
Hey, Michael.
So, Michael, thank you for chiming in here. And all right, we're going to fire away with your question. In Superflex, you're starting 11 with 4 flexes and 3 receivers. Should I trade Pickens to be my wide receiver 3? I also have Drake London, Malik Neighbors, Deebo Samuel, Jerry Jeudy, Jalen McMillan, and he also has Judkins and Skattebo. So I guess would you swap Pickens in for any of, I'd say, London and Neighbors you're going to want to hang on to, but it's the conversation starts at Deebo, probably Jeudy or McMillan. I think I would have Pickens ranked 3rd among that group of receivers. What do you think?
I see it similarly, but in cases like this, I don't even think it matters so much what you specifically think about Pickens relative to these other receivers, as much as it's a good dynasty practice just in general to check the temperature on a player like Pickens and the owner who has Pickens when some event like this occurs, because some people go into a despair spiral. Some people think, oh, Pickens is toast. Pickens is never doing anything now. And just in case the person in your league is one of those people, it never hurts to check to see if you can get a quality talent for maybe a little less money on the dollar than they're worth. But I would not pursue Pickens in such a way that forces you to rearrange your roster. If you can kind of just tack them on, add them to the list of reinforcements, that's always a good thing. But if you have to frame it as like, I got to get rid of Deebo to make room, that's the kind of move where I'm less interested, just because it could pay off. Like I like Pickens enough. I think there's a way it could clearly work, and Deebo, he may be over the hill a little bit, but there's things that could go wrong in the cases of both players. There's upside scenarios in the case of both players. And I would need to be like nudged with an incentive to have to take a side on those questions. But if Pickens is straight up cheap and you could just use the cheap depth, that's one scenario where I feel like you might as well go ahead. And as far as who you might move, I would move McMillan. I guess I tried something as stingy as like just offer McMillan for Pickens to the other guy, because if they're high on McMillan and they think like, oh, McMillan's good, Pickens sucks, someone out there might believe that, and if it's that guy, that's one trade I would definitely do. But Jeudy is, I guess, where the line. I'd trade Jeudy for Pickens probably, but I say that as someone who's probably higher on Pickens than most people, and I can't tell if that one might be a little more reckless than trading McMillan for Pickens.
So a slight, perhaps
crap.
misreading by me. So Pickens is on his roster. Would you feel comfortable moving him, knowing that you have Debo,
Well, then
Judy?
it's just the other side of the same issue, right? So it's like if
Yeah.
someone in your league is a Pickens truther and is offering to take him off your hands for a decent price, take it. But I don't think I would decide your wide receiver depth chart now. 1 and 2 are decided, and I'd pick 3 based on the matchup and hopefully things like who's healthier, who's got a healthier quarterback, things like that.
I find that there's always like maybe this particular pool of people is drying up a little bit, but I feel like there's always a Debo guy in every league.
There's
that
oftentimes a guy of guys you would never expect. They believe crazy things about them.
So I feel like Debo,
gotta find them.
You add on the fact that he's going to Washington, kind of a big prove it time in his career. We all, are excited about this Washington offense. Hype. Yeah. So I feel like he would be the one that I'm maybe doing a temperature check with some of the other managers in my league. Let's get on back over to some stacking, some teams to potentially target. The Jaguars are a fascinating one. I don't think if you just kind of sort by team, any team has the same exact shape as the Jaguars do, as far as their players, where they get drafted and by position. So unsurprisingly, Brian Thomas is a home run first round type of guy. I'm surprised to see his ADP at 12.2. Maybe that has a little bit to do with Genty like firmly being in the first round now. At this point, he's 11.2 over on Sleeper in their half point contest. Travis Hunter has jumped way up since being drafted by the Jaguars. He was going around pick 100, and I was flimsily saying like, oh, I'm interested in him in the 10th round. Now it's like, well, that's not a question anymore. It's are you interested?
Now people
are
all competing to be the biggest. They're like, no, I think he's going to have 1,500 yards this year. I think he's going to be better than Brian Thomas. This is craziness in my opinion. But yeah, it's funny. Hunter's price and to a lesser extent Thomas's price make it really difficult to stack the Jaguars to do a proper conventional stack. The Hunter part is just a crazy price that I'm never going to consider. But no. If you have, I feel like Thomas is a pretty blue chip guy at this point, so I have no problem taking him in the first round. But in any case, the curious thing about the Jacksonville stack is that you've got Thomas going in the first round and Travis Hunter going in, I don't know, who knows, maybe like the second soon, the third right now. Trevor Lawrence goes in the 12th and 13th round. Who is I have to ask the people, who is playing quarterback for these other 8 games where Trevor Lawrence apparently is not? Like where are these receivers catching passes from such that Lawrence ends up in the 13th round, but they end up in the first and the third? That I think is a pretty objective and massive disconnect. Don't get me wrong. I don't want people to start drafting Trevor Lawrence in the 8th round. I want all the Trevor Lawrence shares, but that's so cheap in the part of Lawrence that I'm like, I feel like he's almost subsidizing the cost of the other parts of his stack, specifically Thomas. I'm not going to be interested in Hunter no matter what, but Lawrence in the 12th or 13th, Thomas in the first, De'Ami Brown or Parker Washington in wherever, like the 14th or something. That's great. That'll work for me every time.
Right. So, I mean, Lawrence just being as cheap as he is, and I guess there are enough people that feel like they've been burned by the Trevor Lawrence hype in recent year, really that just the last 2 years, to where it's like, oh, I'm going to let someone else take him. I'm going to go with JJ McCarthy or something instead. I want to be in more leagues with those people. Yes. I think Trevor Lawrence with guys
people
like
people don't know ball, man. There are all these people like who just look at box scores who are like, Trevor Lawrence is the 24th best quarterback in the NFL. Man, thank you. This time it really is happening though. I mean, Doug Peterson was a buffoon. It was not perfectly clear because Urban Meyer was the woat before him. Correct. But Liam Cohen can kind of be a bad generic offensive coach in the NFL and still do a better job than Press Taylor and Urban Meyer did the past however many cursed years it's been. So
No, exactly.
I think this team is going to get cracking a little bit. And Lawrence is a top 10 quarterback. I know it's not worth arguing about, but we also won't need to argue about it much longer from now.
Exactly. So I'm looking forward to those days being behind us, and we will be sitting upon our nice ivory vindicated thrones. The running backs, though, are kind of another tricky detail here because theirs are very clustered as far as the ADP goes. You got Travis Etienne going at like the end of the 10th round at pick 118, Bashal Tutin, the rookie out of Virginia Tech, very fast. Running back going about 5 picks after him. And then everyone's favorite, Tank Bigsby, is going at 149. What gives Bigsby hive? I thought that you would have remained stout and resolute, but appears not. Appears you've Andied the Woody of Tank Bigsby and picked up Bashal Tutin instead.
Yeah, I think this is a tough one for a lot of reasons, one of which is Liam Cohen and what is it, Gladstone or whatever. They might be low on ETN because I think it's going to turn out that Gladstone's a big like EPA guy and like projected WAR per dollar kind of guy. And if they do things like if they mix in what do you call it, the charting grades, the various services that do grades. It's like if you have any space at all for those kinds of variables in your process, I think it's one where you're liable to do kind of anything because you're following static, not signal. Like you're following something that isn't real and hoping incidentally that it works out. But it makes them liable to fixate on those things and ignore the material realities, easily observe material details like Travis Etienne sure is fast. Give him a little room. Sure seems like he runs away from people a lot. And I don't know how much Cohen and Gladstone are viewing things that way as much as they're just sort of looking at a sheet and it says, oh, well, on this chart, the final box for the formula, it's in a kind of a shade of red, and we were hoping that it'd be like a bright yellow or low green, and it landed in the red. Like they might defer all thought processes, all consciousness to processes like those. And because Etienne's been hurt a lot, because the EPA type details work against him, because the success rate type details work against him, I could see Gladstone and Cohen making what I think would be a highly costly mistake and getting rid of Etienne, in large part because they just think it's what they're supposed to do. Like they just think like, oh, the convention reasoning says like you shouldn't a running back with a low EPA on a 1-year deal when you could move him and go on to a cheaper running back, save $5 million and give the whole offense to Bashal Tutin. Man, has anyone looked at how much Tank Bigsby and Bashal Tutin have fumbled the past 2 years? If Cohen and Gladstone are so sure of themselves and their charts that they don't care about details anymore, they don't care about questions anymore, like who's hardest to tackle with the football, if those kinds of things are no longer important to them, they might move ETN to, I don't know, anybody. And then they might all just put it on Tutin and Bigsby because they don't see them as players with traits as much as they see them as running backs with projected EPA numbers attached to them. And you might miss some pretty important details when you do that. Like, again, Tutin he has 8 fumbles over the last 2 years on something like 400 touches. Bigsby is one of the worst fumblers in the NFL, and he has a power element to serve in that offense, which if they get rid of ETN, what you're going to see is Bigsby start, and you're going to see Tutin be the guy off the bench. Bigsby can't do passing downs at all. He has some power to him, but he's still not a powerful running back. Like the only time he was running people over last year was against that gassed New England defense where they basically quit on Gerard Mayo in the second quarter. ETN was playing through a bad shoulder and hamstring all year. I know people tend to like react to the most recent information, but ETN being hurt all year and Bigsby having 2 good games against crap defenses in the process, that doesn't mean Bigsby's ahead of ETN, or at least it doesn't mean Bigsby's good. And ETN could get sent out, and both Bigsby and Tootin could be bust because they could both fumble so much and drop so many passes that the Jags go and sign like whatever, Isaiah Crowell or something. And that's how easily that could get screwed up. So I'm not buying Tootin. I'm not buying Bigsby. I might buy Bigsby though, if only because he's cheaper right now. I've seen Tootin go ahead of ETN. So
Right.
If Bigsby's the one that we know, Bigsby and Tootin are the ones we know will be on the team, and we know Tootin can't run power concepts. We know he drops the ball like crazy. So I could see Bigsby getting a lot of work if he's the last guy hanging around. But the Jaguars would be really foolish to get rid of ETN without getting another running back who is better than Tootin and Bigsby, because if they just give those guys the ball and assume like, oh, running backs are all the same, well, wait till you see wait till you get more fumbles than rushing touchdowns this year. See if that affects your priorities.
Well, I think if I'm going for running back, I'm going to draw from two teams that we've talked about in this podcast earlier. I think you kind of sold me on Javonte Williams, where he's going, just because of that offensive line, and
I was
who
the
else
hater.
is really going to be.
I was the first hater. I was the loudest hater, and now look at it. That and Marshawn Lloyd, they're on all my teams.
That's awesome. I love that. And then I think to a lesser extent, I'm like pretty out on Christian McCaffrey this year, and so Isaac Guerendo in the 13th kind of is interesting to me as well.
I love Guerendo. He's one of those guys who I have to kind of like cut myself off from the hopium, because I get carried away if I dwell on it too much. It's like he's 5 tool, he's blue chip, he's the greatest, and then it's like,
who's as fast and big as he is? Nobody.
But the problem is he does not have like a hamstring in one of his legs, and he has managed to incur every possible kind of injury despite barely playing over the last 6 years. So I would love for Guerendo to just go totally nuts, and if he stays healthy, he will. The one thing, Guerendo isn't truly like a 5-tool guy because his balance is kind of bad, but your balance can be somewhat poor when you otherwise are, you're running a 4-3-3. You're powerful enough at 220 to bowl over defensive backs. He can catch passes really well. So yeah, if McCaffrey misses time and Guerendo doesn't, he'd be like the running back one. It would be ridiculous.
Yeah, it could be crazy. So I think the 13th round, I'm like willing to take a look. Obviously, that's a couple rounds different than when you're going to be looking at either ETN or Tootin or Javonte Williams. But that's kind of like how I'm attacking the running backs right now. And then I'll never argue with anybody taking a little Ray Davis right around pick 150 either.
He's cheap, man. He's another one that's like, if the starter's out, Davis can become a top 10 fantasy asset, because he would take more volume than Cook would, because Cook can only withstand so much volume. But Davis is 5'8", 220. He can.
Any other running backs any other stacks to maybe let the people chew on here before we get out of here?
Actually, it's this most years would not at all fit under the cheap stack definition, and it arguably doesn't even really now. But I'm going back to Mahomes. I mean, you can get him in something like the 7th or even 8th round, I want to say sometimes, and that's so cheap. It's like somebody's going to take like Brock Purdy in that round, So it's like I might as well. I know Mahomes has been so bad the last 2 years that literally Brock Purdy is more valuable, and probably pretty much every other quarterback. But Rashee Rice, if he stays healthy, I think he has shown that he changes the complexion of that offense. And I'm still a Marquise Brown truther. I still call him Marquise Brown, even though he's listed as Hollywood Brown. And I tried to draft him a handful of times, but thought he wasn't in the player list because I searched for Marquise. But he goes in like the 12th and 13th round and stuff like that. And sure, he's a durability problem. Sure, he's probably not going to play more than like 800 snaps, if that, because Andy Reid loves to rotate his receivers. But if I can get Mahomes in the 7th or 8th, Marquise Brown in the 12th or 13th, I don't mind paying the Rashee Rice 3rd or 4th round price or whatever in that case, because I feel like I'm almost getting subsidized a little bit with the other two picks. So I'm not pursuing Kelsey, but the Mahomes, Rice, Brown trio I like quite a bit, although I am a little lower on Worthy than most people. So that, if that explains why I went straight to Rice and Brown rather than Worthy.
Have you given any thought with the Kelsey detail being mentioned? You think it all just kind of gets filtered out to the receivers, or
it's more
any
like I just don't want
utility
to
in no
deal with
gray?
it.
Yeah.
It's just that I'm sure there's some round with a certain tight end depth chart where you could catch me picking Kelsey. It's just those conditions don't happen. I don't wait until whatever round to take my tight end 2 that I need to, and also have Kelsey be on the board at that point. Like somebody's taking him, but I think Kelsey's basically toast. We'll see. He definitely had a lot of attention on him last year for a guy as old as he was. Maybe getting Rice back, maybe a full season with Marquise Brown. Maybe that gives Kelsey more room to run than he's seen in years. But if he gets the same level of defensive attention as last year, it's an 8 yards per catch tight end does nothing for me, really.
No, I don't think so either. So I'm
not in half point PPR anyway.
Yeah, I'm gonna be staying away for sure, and I'll be keeping a closer eye on Rashee Rice than I thought, given your optimism. I love the player too, but I was
just so expensive
at
receiver, no matter what, on Underdog. Yeah. And it's like I got to take some receiver that I'm like, oh, this is too expensive. And if I can at least get a guy like Brown for what I think is, really cheap later on, I can kind of get over it a little easier.
Yeah, definitely, and you can certainly expect him to stay relatively cheap in the ADP. But that's going to do it for us here on this edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Big thanks to everyone for listening. Big thanks to our sponsors over at the Blue Wire Network, over at Circa as well. If you're watching on the live stream, check out our promo code ROTO15, or if you're listening in podcast form, go to rotowire.com, code ROTO15. That'll get you 15% off any RotoWire product. Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie. Thanks for listening.